I'm going to be cutting all of this out. So future viewers will have no idea. So,
Good idea.
yeah. So, my name's Anthony Horvath, and I'm the host of the Gutencast. And I'm just going to, oh, yeah, I tell you what, put this on my lap so I don't have to keep turning my head. Um, Tonight, we're going to be talking with Chuck Susa, the co-owner of the 1891 Winery, and I've got a little remote control thing going on here that allows me to manipulate things. So if I seem a little bit distracted, just look at him. That's the rule. That's the rule for the evening. Um, Chances are good that if this is the first time that you're watching this, maybe you're a local, you know him, you know of me. You probably don't know what I do. Not many people do. Well, I kind of do some farming. You probably know that, Dynamite Harvest. But I'm a writer and a publisher, and I haven't really promoted my own stuff for a while here.
Slacking a little.
I know. Actually, I haven't promoted my own stuff in a long time. So here's some of my recent books. Uh, the Warden Watch and the Fisher King's Apprentice. A little bit hard to see that out because of the light shining on it. I see that. And the Warden Watch has a nice little feature of Bigfoot. And if you look at my shirt here, can you see Bigfoot? There it is. So really high class stuff going on here. So anyway, hope that this will be an invitation to begin to find out a little bit more about the things that I do, whether you're local or not. So this podcast is a way for me to promote not just my own works, but I have about 25 to 30 authors that I publish as well. And we've been having them on as guests as well. And just the quick vision is to use the internet to finally get people talking, because right now the internet's just a lot of people yelling at each other, which I enjoy as much as the next guy. But man does not live on yelling alone. Eventually, it's fun to have a good conversation, and I figured let's use technology to do that. And one of the other things that I do is I try to find things from the past, something that's not happening today. Like everyone's fixated on whatever we're arguing about today, and I don't like to be a slave to whatever the news media is feeding me today. So I like to go digging around through history, find the things that left marks on our present day, and talk about them. And that brings us to Jimmy Carter and beer. Now you might not know this, but before Jimmy Carter, it was illegal to brew beer in the United States. There was that whole prohibition thing. I don't know what the state of things was before that, but prohibition definitely got rid of it. Um, but someone snuck a little line. Well, the short story is that after prohibition was gotten rid of, most of the alcohol stuff became legal, but they forgot to legalize brewing beer. I don't how.
Micro brewing. So it really comes back to making beer at home.
Yeah.
For those purposes, and because you could make wine at home, but the one thing you could not do is make beer. Of course, you still can't make liquor at home,
Right.
but yeah, it wasn't till 79
Right.
that there was a little writer that was added in, and um, it was a Republican from Wisconsin that co-authored that.
How about that?
So, um,
Who's shocked by this information? There was a guy
no
from
one.
Wisconsin.
But originally, it was an individual from California, but another lawmaker. But otherwise, yes,
Yeah.
it was a counterpart, which is kind of odd. It was a Democrat from California and then a Republican
Right.
from Wisconsin that ended up sneaking it in, just like
That's
how
right.
almost everything else
Right.
gets handled.
That's right. That's how it all begins.
Yep.
But finally, one that worked out for us. Yeah.
In our favor, yes.
Yeah.
For myself, I don't make too much beer, but I like
No.
drinking it.
Yeah. Well, so this conversation has been coming for a long time between you and I. We were talking about bringing you on for a while, and the first time we looked into this, it actually you found a link on your phone that made it sound like even wine wasn't legal, but that's not right, is it?
So when Prohibition first started, it um, it was basically so no intoxicating liquors. So wine itself, yes, it is intoxicating, um, but when they originally wrote that law, um, of course, there's a loophole like any other law,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a court case. Don't recall which court case it was, and that basically opened up the door for a household to make 200 gallons of wine at home per year. So 200 gallons,
It's not really enough, is it?
well, for most people, 200 gallons is 1,000 bottles almost. So,
Trying to
if
do some
if
quick math here. If
you,
you can go through that much, you might have a problem.
that's impressive.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you'll be able to survive the third year, but
All right.
um, so it making wine at home was really never illegal, even during Prohibition, um, because of course because of the court case that happened back then. That was in the early days of Prohibition, and um, and it's funny because it is still that way to this day, actually. So, but back in the early 20s, a lot of people used it for medicinal. Um, but then a lot of the immigrants that were here were from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that their families have done forever, and they wanted to carry on that tradition. So um, it was very popular, and that's really where um, a lot of the massive vineyards that are alive in California today is because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, ironically, though, it seems that even though wine was not outlawed, they were they were worried maybe might that it might happen, so they just began selling blocks of grapes with a warning label not to add yeast
Yes.
to it. And of course, like everyone's like, "Thank you for that helpful tip."
Do not add 20 grams of yeast. Do not add 10 gallons of water.
Right.
Thank you. I will not do that.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you. You know.
So,
But
we have been in the presence of a temptation now for about
yes, I'm
45
very
minutes.
thirsty.
I think it's time. You choose. So this is wine that Chuck makes at his winery there. Yeah.
Oop,
Here we
hold
go.
on that one.
Here, I'll give you a close up. Here comes a close up. There it is. There's a delay. See,
Oh,
so
sorry.
there's too much light on it.
Ah,
Yeah. Anyway, so he's gonna pop that open because I thought you know for the whole experience of drinking the wine, the viewers should watch us open the wine, hear the wine pop open. Yeah. So which one did you? Which one is it?
so this is the Lambert Red.
Okay.
Very, very delicious. Um, so Lambert, all of our dries that we currently have right now, they're actually all named after the the earliest settlers in town, and
Oh,
um,
I didn't know that.
in a little while, I can tell you all of our story after we get through the first part of Prohibition and Jimmy Carter and
Yeah.
where it all came from, and
Well, we're almost there. we're almost through it. Yeah. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
delicious.
Yeah, I think your Lambert Red is probably my
Mm,
my favorite out of all of them.
mm, it's a good 12 and a half. Mm, I can feel it warming.
12 and a half. Oh, the ABV.
ABV. Yep. Huh. Yeah. So, you know, during Prohibition, it really didn't kill um, the wine industry at all. It probably really helped it grow. Um, and so, kind of backpedaling or sidetracking here a little bit. When we had our um, state inspection, so there was a special agent from the DOR that showed up, and super scary guy, and he's the one that can, yes, you can succeed in life and fulfill your dreams, or he can completely squash them
Right.
and say, no, you cannot do this,
Yeah.
sorry. um, and he was explaining to us that almost 90% of his job as a special agent at the DOR is actually just education, um, not enforcement. Yes, they will do enforcement, but there are so many, well, at least at the time, there were so many rules and regulations that
Hmm.
um, even had a lot of loopholes or gray areas, and they would help people navigate that, because there's there's really no guidebook
Yeah.
on, well, like for us opening a winery there, without my mentors, um, I I would have really had no idea on what I need to do or who I even need to call for all the licensing.
Right.
And
Yeah. So I took a picture of your wall of licenses, but I decided not to go through the trouble of you know
mhm,
putting it on here for today. But um, there must be 10 up there. Do you think?
there's there's quite a few, and then there's the individual
But,
server licenses
oh, right,
as
right.
as well.
So you have to. My point is that's a lot that you have to navigate. If you're just starting,
Hmm.
well, I bet you didn't tell me this is the case, but I bet you got in there with like you did half the licenses and you thought you were done, and then you found out, oh nope, there's another one.
It there was a couple at the end, but um, just kind of getting back to where it was at though. But super scary Buck Robertson
Yeah,
though
okay.
told me about these laws. He's like, these are in Wisconsin. They're all Prohibition era, and
Hmm.
like they're way out of date, all Prohibition era. And I'm like, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
They make new rules and regulations every day. Um, but it was kind of interesting,
Uh huh.
um, you know, learning about prohibition and how, and it is still in, I guess, in the law, or still in effect, that a individual or two people living in a household can still make 200 gallons of wine per calendar year. So, but if there is only one person over the age of 21 in the household, you can only make 100 gallons. Granted, you cannot sell that
Hmm.
wine, but you can barter,
Yeah, sure.
you know. Um, of course, I had a lot of friends when I was still making at home. Um, they would bring me stuff, and I would make it, and I'd give them some in return.
Hmm.
I it was it, for me, it worked out really well, because then that was a good way to learn
Hmm.
and play with a lot of different materials.
And get
Just,
things from people.
yes, well, because uh, fruit's expensive,
Hmm.
you know, and um, I'm good at killing plants, not growing them. So I'm I recognize that right away, and I stay in my lane.
Uh huh.
I can I like to say I continue on the good Lord's work.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, turning water into wine.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. Yeah, that reminds me of my own little joke about. how God's favorite sport is wrestling.
Really?
Yeah, because he wrestled Jacob and he cheated. Remember that? He touched him on the he met him. He met Jacob in the at a river or something like that. And you remember that story?
Uh, no, I'm a
Uh,
bad Catholic.
well, the bottom line is that God went all like WWE on him, and all he did was like the super death touch, and it wrenched out his hip.
Really?
But the point is that we have documented evidence of God wrestling, and I was a wrestler. So whenever I get into it with the basketball players, I make sure that they know where they stand in the rankings, because that got no mention at all. No basketball in the Bible,
Nope, not at all.
not
Hmm.
even one little bit. Anyway,
Hmm.
that was a weird
So,
detour.
um, yeah. So prohibition itself, yeah, it was very interesting. Only in place for what, almost 13 years. It wasn't really in place for very long. Um, yes, 13 years is a
Mm-hmm.
long time, but
Yeah.
it's not really in the grand scheme of things. Um,
So you said that you found prohibition era laws that are still on the books here in Wisconsin.
so there a large majority that were in place until last May, actually.
Really?
So back in 23, Act Act 73, there's some other SB omnibus alcohol fancy terminology, but the short, it's called Act 73, and um, Tony Evers signed that in 23. It took effect in May last year, and a lot of people are probably very familiar with it because it it was basically the wedding barn bill.
Oh yes, I
Yes,
heard about that,
yes.
but there's some connection to the pro with.
So it really um, it took a lot of the rules and laws that were on the books and simplified them, clarified them, and eliminated some loopholes, and actually brought the, well, not just the producers, but also bars, a lot of the other rules and regulations,
Mm-hmm.
up to date, per se, because they're, so for wineries, or I shouldn't say wineries, a producer, because I'm a producer, you were really only allowed to own one or have your name on the books for one producing location in the state of Wisconsin. But there was gray areas in there on that. Um, so there was actually an individual over towards the Appleton area who owned two wineries, and of course the state was trying to shut him down. He was suing them, and he was really
Mm-hmm.
winning actually in the end, because there was just so much gray area. And in the past, I've actually talked to Buck Robertson from the state DOR, and actually the individual that is the head of the state DOR down in Madison, and asked them some questions. And the answer I got when I was putting in a permit for something, and they're like, I really have no idea. Just send in the permit,
Uh
and we'll see if it goes through.
huh. Uh huh.
Well, like, I what
Yeah.
I what kind of answer
Right.
for the people who run that,
Yeah.
and even when it took effect in May
Yeah.
last year, they had the rules, but they didn't really have the definition of what it really meant. They, I don't know if they're even completely done writing everything yet.
So the issue that comes to my mind. So as you know, I'm fiercely libertarian
Hmm.
in my outlook, and so like my mind is like my mind goes to how many of these permits, how many of these loopholes are or not loopholes, hurdles that you have to go through,
Hmm.
like justify like what possible interest is there in them. But on the other hand, at the same time, there is sort of the pragmatic realist part where, okay, but if you're going to have a rule or a law, then it should be unambiguous what it means, right? Because
Hmm.
people like you and I, we like we do things in the world, right? And or we'll say we'll want to. But if we come up to a gray area where we're like, huh, I'm not sure if I do that, maybe I get fined. I mean, I don't know. It could go either way. And so then you just don't do anything, right?
And that we kind of came across that in the early stages. Um, so one of them, for example, was our name. Scared the hell out of me with our name when I was coming up with it, was because you cannot have a date attached to a wine label. The But you can have a date per se if it's a vintage 2023, but that is the only date you can have on your wine label. You
Okay.
cannot have any other dates because the truth in labeling. So, which I completely understand
Okay.
because they want labels to be simple so anybody can read them and understand them, which it completely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want anything confusing because
Yeah.
it might be some important allergen or something. Who
Sure.
knows?
Right.
But um, so I'm like, hell, can we even call ourselves 1891? I didn't sleep one night. I was
Mm.
so like, oh my god, I didn't know what the hell to do. I talked to Casey, and then she's like, it'll probably be fine, So I was still all worried. I waited for the TTB to open up,
Uh-huh.
and TTB is the federal. I
Okay.
I call up the lady. Oh hell, honey, nobody's gonna think that wine's from 1891. Don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, oh God. Well,
Uh-huh.
thank God.
Yeah.
That that was great. But then the other scare was when we were meeting with Buck Robertson. I didn't really have an answer, and what what that was from was when you have a winery, you have a lot of couples that come in. And sometimes the significant other doesn't like wine. And for me, I think it's just because they haven't had a good wine yet,
Okay. Yeah.
But sometimes
Sure.
there's somebody who just doesn't like wine. Well, for the couple to come in and only one is sitting there enjoying some wine and then the other one's just sitting there like a bump on a log. I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's not very fun. It's not enjoyable. They're not going to stay long. They're just not going to have a good time. And so serving alternatives to wine was very important in my eyes because then it doesn't matter who the customer is, because then we also have water and beer and
Mm-hmm.
a kind of full spectrum. So then we can please every customer that comes in. And so if you hold, as a producer, if you hold one Class B permit, you can only hold one Class B permit at the time. And the only people that can have two Class B permits, because at the time, I needed a Class B beer and a Class B wine. And the Class B allows to come in, consume, and carry out as much as you want. And if I can't get the Class B beer, well,
Uh-huh.
damn, I'm just stuck with wine,
Yeah.
which we were actually for a little while last year. But um, the only way to get it is if you are a restaurant, and not a majority, but a large percentage of your sales are actually food.
Hmm.
And because that's how the law was written. But when I asked Buck about that, oh, you serve food? Oh yeah, you're fine.
Hmm.
Like it was a large gray area that
Uh-huh.
almost everybody fell under.
Yeah. All right.
So it
Yeah.
was a little scary, but
Right.
we got through it.
Yeah. And so, in my attitude towards things like that is that if you're not going to enforce it, and I'm glad they're not enforcing it,
Uh,
get rid of it.
but it all changed. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Now, so since then, um, X73 replaced that.
I see.
So last year, yeah, we ran for, oh my goodness, 2 months or a touch over 2 months where we could not sell beer.
Hmm.
So since that was replaced with all Act 73, we now had to apply for another permit through the state to be a full service establishment. So in the past, just like the bars, legions, um, they still have to get their Class B beer, Class B liquor from the municipality that they're in. Um, and that's what we had to do as well in the past, but now we do not. We do not get a Class B beer. We don't get anything from the municipality. The municipality actually has no say in how we operate anymore.
Hmm.
Um, they can petition the state, of course, if they're having issues, but um, now, but then, okay, so there's rules to get the full service establishment. So for us, we have to produce over 1,000 gallons in any of the 3 previous years, and then we can sell. And which is kind of surprising for me is that we can sell beer, wine, and liquor if we wanted to. Granted, we are not going to do liquor because we are not a bar and we do
Uh-huh.
not want a bar.
Yeah.
But that was in the past, that was strictly forbidden. If you were a winery and had a producer's license, you cannot get a liquor
Hmm.
license. So it when this whole full service establishment thing came out, I even called the DOR to get clarification. Like, does this really mean I can serve liquor
Mm-hmm.
too? Like, it completely surprised me. But then along with that, um, there are other categories or stages or milestones that you can hit. So um, after you hit 1,000 gallons, then you can become a full service establishment. So of course I have to apply for that every year. But then between 1,000 and 5,000 gallons produced, you can then open up a alternate location off site. So you can have your winery where you're producing and then have
Hmm.
a whole nother retail location in another city. But then after the 5 to 10, then you can open up two all the way up to three alternate locations.
So, what is? Do I even dare ask? Like why? Like why do they care? Why do they create that ladder threshold? I mean, what difference does it make to them? Feel free to.
I really I guess so. For some, of course, hitting that 1,000 gallon mark, that's a ton of wine. You know,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when you consider, okay, so 1,000 gallons,
Mm-hmm.
that's over 5,000 bottles of wine. That's a lot of wine. Not too many people are going to be able to reach that mark. Granted, almost any winery in the state of Wisconsin can, but by doing that, um, per se, okay, because the Act 73 was seen as the the bill against the wedding barns. If a wedding barn wanted to get this full service establishment, well, if that mark was really low and they'd be able to hit that real easy, well, then almost everybody would do it.
Well, that was actually what it was sounding like, and
Mm-hmm.
like, so what's wrong with that?
That's a lot of wine.
No, I mean, if
You know,
is it a way to is it the thought is to protect the established companies so that they don't have all these smaller competitors eating away at them?
you know, I possibly I I don't know. You I guess we'd really have to ask the lawmaker
Yeah,
that
right.
wrote that,
Yeah,
and um, they probably have no idea.
I'm sure the Tavern League has an idea.
um, so
Well,
the
hold on before you. I happen to notice.
oh, you're thirsty.
Well,
Sorry.
and look how much you still have left.
Well, I guess I need to talk less
That's
then
what I'm
and drink
thinking.
more.
Here, can you help me out there? I have this laptop on my lap. Appreciate it. That's good. I told I've been posting on this social media saying that I get to drink on the job tonight. So I've really been
Uh,
looking forward to this. So did you want to pick that Tavern League thing back up, or just
so
leave it alone?
um,
That's real controversial for some people.
the Tavern League is,
Remember, this is being recorded. This is yeah.
and so um, Act 73 was really pushed by the Tavern League. The the Tavern League has one of the strongest
Yeah.
lobbyist groups in the state of Wisconsin. They are the strongest. If if you really wanted any sort of crazy law to get passed in your favor, if you own a bar, oh my God, you got a pretty strong backing. Um, so in years past, yes, there was some new rules and regulations that were put into effect, pointed directly at wineries. And so when when the whole wedding barn thing really started taking off,
Mm-hmm.
um, it it was actually kind of a good thing for wineries, because then it took the Tavern League's eyes off of us and put them on them.
Uh huh.
And so we as a winery owner, um, I think we benefited a little bit off of the Act 73. There were some good things, um, and there's a lot of other good things that came out of it. Um, I know, listening on a different podcast about it, yeah, there's a lot of wedding barn owners that are very upset about it, but then they kind of want them to follow the rules and regulations, because they were basically falling into a gray area where people
Right.
were just bringing all their alcohol in,
Yeah.
you know, um, and and they want to have, just like everywhere else, it's required to have a licensed server at the establishment. Um, I think they probably could have left it at that,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, the wedding bars, or wedding barns are are definitely hurting some of the larger venues.
Yeah.
For example, the Loyal Legion. It was always used for weddings almost every weekend. When my wife and I got married, I you had to get there a year and a half in advance just to try to get a date.
Sure.
You know, and now there's openings all the time because there's a lot of these other venues
Right.
around. So it's hurting some of these other establishments, but I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people put a lot of time and money into these beautiful old barns and brought them all back to life. And you know, it
Yeah.
kind of hurts me, because, like, you're a threat to a large group, and they're going to put you out of business. Well, what about a free and fair market?
Right.
You
Right.
know, that really irritates me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it X73 was okay with me because it eliminated some things, it clarified a lot of things,
Yep.
but still, I feel bad for the wedding barn over in Loyal. I don't know what the hell they're gonna do, but
Yeah. Well, I suppose we're not here to talk about wedding barns, but it is like to tie back to the thread that we started with. It was prohibition,
yep.
and that of course created all sorts of problems, some of which we're still dealing with in other ways. But then to go 50 years where brewing beer was like,
Non-existent.
yeah, in at least in the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the home. And somewhere along the lines, I read that because we said that they had got it passed by sneaking it onto another
Mm-hmm.
bill, which means that it came up a couple times as a standalone bill, and they were voted down, or you know. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
there were people out there who saw it in their interest to tell their legislators, no, we don't suddenly want thousands of people to be able to brew beer in their homes. The competitive threat to that
Mm-hmm.
is obvious. But in the long run, look at what the result has been. I would say the beer
Oh, industry itself is it.
stronger than ever.
Yeah, it completely exploded. Um, and you know, so one of the people that was really pushing that through, of course, was the guy who started Samuel Adams. You know,
Right.
um, that's where even for wine, right? Everything everything started in somebody's basement
Exactly.
at
Yep.
one point, sometime, somewhere.
Dell, the computer place,
Yeah,
and the guy's garage. Yeah.
and so if you don't give the people the opportunity to perfect, but before I opened up the winery, with my wife and the other couple, um, you don't just like, all right, we're gonna make wine today.
Yeah.
You don't just do that. It takes, um, as I say, a lot of trial and error, but just a lot more error than trial, um, because I,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways. It is a very simple process, but you can screw it up very very easily, um, by not doing one step correct. Um, but then, okay, after you figure it out, you still need to like play with your recipes and try to learn your fruits and engage from the taste of this one to how much you're
Hmm.
going to need for that one. But it really comes all from learning at home.
Right.
And if you don't give people the opportunity to do
Yep.
that at home, and but something I thought was really funny, what was it? Alabama and Mississippi just finally passed a law in 2013 that allowed people to make beer at home. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
uh, that wasn't that long ago.
No.
I don't know. It's kind of funny. I went to a friend's place one time on my way down to Florida, and he lives in Alabama, and he lived in a dry county, and like,
Why?
what? I
I mean, why
I
would
I
you
couldn't
willingly do that?
I couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. I heard about it in a movie
Yeah.
once.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, even here in Wisconsin, I don't think we've made it clear in this podcast ever yet that I'm located in Wisconsin. Um, a lot of the municipalities will have like 9 o'clock cutoff times,
Hmm.
and I I mean I sort of understand the wishful thinking behind it. Oh well, this will keep someone from going in at midnight and splurging. It's Wisconsin. Have you seen the alcohol consumption maps? I mean, it's it's not working. Just treat people like adults. You know, it, trying to micromanage people in all these different ways. It's People are just going to work around it in ways, and that now you can do nothing
Hmm.
because they went out of your view to do what they were going to do in the first place. So
Hmm.
just leave them alone.
Well, in back to Prohibition, um, pretty popular show on the old TV. Still to this day, Moonshiners. Who doesn't love Moonshiners? You know, I mean,
Haven't
they're
seen it. Sorry.
they're very interesting group of individuals
Oh,
all over in the hills that are
yes, I
making
have seen
moonshine.
it. Yes.
You know, so
It's very
um,
kind of like it has occasional melodramatic things like, oh,
yeah.
the still's gonna blow up. He's really worried about it. He's watching the gauges. That's the show.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then they got a camera guy riding with a police officer. Oh, we're gonna get him. I know he's in here somewhere.
So stupid.
Oh, it's terrible. But they in why a lot of people are still doing it to this day is because of Prohibition.
Yeah.
And their great grandfathers used to do that, and
Right.
they're just carrying on the
Right.
tradition. Granted, they're making a little coin on the side as
Yeah.
well,
Right.
but and and it's kind of like almost like our wine and our story, right? So those guys that are in the hills, they're using their great grandfather's recipe that he perfected, and it has a name for itself, and everybody in the area wants it, and they're going to pay for it. And it Tim Smith is a very good example. So Tim Smith was on the show Moonshiners, made a lot of moonshine, had a lot of very good product, and actually ended up turning legal. And now
Hmm.
he's selling a lot of moonshine all
Hmm.
over the place. Granted, it's just like any other
Right.
liquor, but they like
Right.
to call it moonshine.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't have gotten to where he is if he didn't start somewhere at some
Right.
time. And
Right.
the same for us.
Yeah.
And so the beer world, I know it's kind of almost going backwards a little bit, because it got really big, I'd say fairly fast, within well, heck, the last 15 years it really exploded. Now it's kind of slowing down a little bit. um for myself, I just like the good old cheap beer.
Yeah.
I do like to splurge once in a
Ah,
while.
stupid thing.
It's fun,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. We were starting to talk about that before we got started, didn't we? Yeah. So, um, kind of lurking behind a lot of our conversation here is, um, if if we feel this way about alcohol, why don't we feel this way about marijuana or even other drugs?
I guess I'm kind of surprised. Um, really, why why did they repeal prohibition? Well, hell, there's a lot of money to be made. You
Right.
know, um, yes, I pay my state excise tax every month like a good boy,
Mm,
and then my federal
mm,
excise tax. Um, because I'm below a certain threshold, I only have to uh, pay once a year. But so kind of funny little side story. The state DOR, I was expecting this great big inspection when Buck showed up, and he just wanted, okay, how secure is your facility?
mm.
Because we want to make sure nobody steals your wine that makes us money. That's
Is that what he said?
he did, but
Oh,
that
okay.
they just want to make sure that
Right.
nothing happens to basically their product,
Sure. Yeah.
because it's their money.
Right.
So, um,
So now, uh, to do your own distilling of liquor is still illegal, and not that I mean to contradict myself and all my libertarian leanings that I've already stated, but you could see the argument with that because, unless you get rid of the first, where
yep,
you got the
yep.
methanol, you can kill somebody, right?
Well, then
So,
you can
or
go
blow something.
blind. Yep.
Yeah, or blow up something. I mean, that is at least a little bit more like there's a clear public health risk to that
Yes. Yes, there
versus with
is.
beer, wine, and I would say even marijuana. With marijuana, of course, I I don't smoke it. Just so you know, I do not smoke it. But the real danger that we're seeing in our society right now is when other things are going into it.
Yes, because it's not controlled.
Yeah.
Um, they're
Well, so if people were growing their own, then they would never have to worry about something being put in it. All right, go on.
no that, and man, look at all the tax money they could
Right.
possibly make. You know,
Yeah.
so I like to listen to a podcast, or not a podcast, sorry, a radio station that is right leaning out of L.A. So it's really, for me, it's kind of funny. It's very hilarious listening. So um, John and Ken are on after 5 p.m. in the afternoons, and oh my God, do they just, look at this big dumb idiot, and they're talking about Newsom and all the great ideas they come up with.
Uh-huh.
But listening to them a couple years ago, they were talking about how, yeah, they have all the legal marijuana here now, but the cartels, which are very close by,
Right.
um, they actually started a drug war with the state of California.
The cartels.
The cartels
Yeah.
did. Like, are you serious? You got a government entity is actually in a
Yeah.
drug war with, hey, I I
Yeah.
I can't blame them. I mean, the
Right.
cartels are going to make their money no matter
Right.
what you do. Um,
Yeah.
but at least with the government controlling, but then, God, I hate using the word government controlling because it means they're
Take a
controlling
take a
us.
drink. Take a drink.
Uh,
Settle down. Relax.
but at least if there's rules and regulations and some sort of system, just like wine
Mm-hmm.
in our labels,
Yeah.
truth in labeling,
Yeah.
at least there's some sort of checks and balances to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that, yes, Mr. Governor, you're going to get your tax dollars,
Mm-hmm.
but if people are doing this, at least it's going to be clean and
Right.
at least safer.
Yeah. So there's two things this podcast was not about tonight:
Almost everything.
barns
In
and
marijuana.
marijuana. so, so maybe we should move on a little bit. Um, but I do want to sometime have a podcast just zero in on that, because the testimony of prohibition as a thing that happened from history, an experiment, we'll call it.
Hmm.
I mean, it had pretty clear results, and we don't seem to be learning from them, I think, in some ways. But I digress. I digress.
It was kind of funny how, when you opened up, you're like, I'd like to go back in time
Yeah.
and come up with a topic. Well, you know, doing that is very important, because you should learn from your mistakes and then continue to grow from them. But you cannot continue to grow if you don't even really remember what your original mistake was.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's best to, yes, go back in time and then, like, yep,
Yeah.
I kind of remember, and keep on
Right.
progressing, because otherwise, yes,
Yeah.
history repeats itself. Well, because we keep on making the same stupid mistakes because
Right.
we don't know our history.
Right. The word you're looking for there is dumbass. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Uh. Yeah. That really resonates with me from a lot of different levels. But um, one of the other things besides the mistakes that we don't learn from is the realities that we live with in this, and we don't realize how much the parameters of our daily life have been established by people who have been dead for a long time. And if you don't know about that, if you just continue to like go with the status quo, and you don't think about it too much,
Mhm.
you could just be stuck with a living in a really stupid situation, which we are often, for no reason. And I'll no, I don't want to give too many examples, but as an example, no, No, I better
Nope.
not.
Nope.
Nope. Maybe if while we're talking, I can think of a way to say it without hijacking my own podcast. We'll come back to. But the point is that people long ago they set the framework. We're living within it, and if you would think at some point we should want to know what that is and reevaluate. Is this what we wanted? Why should we be slaves to people who are 100 years from now?
You
Or,
know, I learned this a while ago. That fancy little piece of paper that a bunch of dudes in a tiny little house out on the East Coast sign their name on, is a living document. And it really is. And it to me, so my grandfather knew my grandfather very well, passed away in 2019 at the age of 97. And listening to him tell his stories, starting to farm with horses, he's seen, like the invention of electricity,
mm-hmm.
granted it was before his time,
Yeah.
but to think, 1776, like, it is very impressive on how that one piece of paper, but the knowledge that those guys had
Mm-hmm.
back then, that is still like almost up to date for
Right.
2025. Like, man, they were some super smart dudes.
Yeah. And they, to a man, knew their history
Mm-hmm.
really well because they crafted that document in light of the many errors and mistakes and abuses of the previous centuries,
Mm-hmm.
which which a lot of times when modern people evaluate the Constitution, I don't know if the viewer knows this. He was talking about the Constitution this whole time. You have to tell people that. Like we don't understand.
Mm.
We don't have a grasp of the history that would have been recent for them, like
Mm-hmm.
the 30 Years War in Europe, for example. Like all the different things, like we would understand and appreciate better their positions if we knew what they were responding to, and a lot of people don't, and so they just evaluate the Constitution on its own terms apart from that, and then they also don't realize then that the things that they were responding to still happen
Mm-hmm.
or could still happen, and so that's why it's still applicable because yeah, it's those abuses still happen.
It But the Second Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
um God, where it's just so impressive, because I mean they were writing with a feather.
That's what real men do.
True.
The
I
real
wish
man.
I had a feather pen.
I think I will acquire one.
I almost have to now. That would be pretty cool.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Go on. You were saying something else. Something important, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just really impressive though how, um, they were so smart. And back then, with almost no technology, yeah, they had some books, but uh, they probably didn't have that many books
Right.
back then,
Yeah.
you know, and just the ability to get books. Well, now you can use Amazon, you can get any book about anything and
Yeah.
learn about it. Well,
Yeah.
they didn't have that back then. And to craft such a beautiful piece of, well, our government and rules and regulations, and what really helps kind of keep the government in check. um it
Kinda.
kind of, you know um thank God for, um freedom of speech,
Right.
freedom of press. it it's just, to me, it's just mind boggling, because, oh my God, if somebody could write the or if we had to rewrite the US Constitution today,
Yeah.
oh my God, it it'd be 3
Right.
million
It
pages
would. Yeah.
full of,
Yeah.
we got to make sure the ponies are safe, and I just all kinds of
Right.
stupid, like,
Yeah.
it. Yeah, there'd be a whole bunch of writers.
Right.
As long as some of the writers on the new Constitution
Mm-hmm.
include wineries, I guess I'll be okay with it.
Sure.
But
So it's ironic when in the direction this has gone that right after the founding of this country, there was the Whiskey Rebellion.
Hmm.
Like immediately after they established the government based on freedom, they're like, no, we're gonna tax you. And the whiskey guys are like, the hell you are, you know. And so it's like the people that you're just like, yay, we love these people, and I'm with you on that.
Yep.
We're like, no, we need money. We're gonna go take it from the alcohol people.
Yep.
Like, just leave the alcohol people alone. That should be one of the lessons of history. Just leave them be.
It's it's the great thing of government. Like, we'll give you something, but you're gonna pay for it.
Right, sure.
You
Yeah.
know that it's kind of the nature of the beast.
Uh-huh.
Um, oh my goodness, just having the winery, it's insane how many different taxes we have to pay for stuff. It just
You want
it's
you want to share some
painful.
of them, or not? You don't have to if you don't
Well,
want to.
just the two different excise taxes. For example, we have the state excise tax, and then we have the federal excise tax. Thankfully, the CBMA, we are able to get a discount through on the federal government side, and so then our federal excise taxes aren't that bad. Those are pretty decent. State excise taxes are actually fairly high.
Hmm.
um, it's a little painful, but
Yeah.
it it's okay. you know um, I like doing what I'm doing, and it really doesn't matter, because at some point the government's going to come in and make up some rule and say whatever you want to do, you can't do.
Yeah.
If you like driving your car fast, you're going to get a speeding ticket. If you want to have a expensive car, well, the government makes you buy or car insurance, so then you're going to pay really high car insurance. So, I mean, it's it's painful because we're a free country, but damn, they tax the hell out of us at, on on everything we
Yeah.
do.
Well, people don't appreciate a lot of those taxes, because especially like if all you do is you get a W-2, you see the taxes coming out.
Yep.
But depending on what the business is, like for the owner is paying taxes in 1,000 different directions that
Yep.
the W-2 person never knows about. The W-2 guy also doesn't usually realize that his W-2 wages would be higher, probably,
Yep.
if the owner didn't have to pay all these other taxes. And of course, you have to increase the price of your wine
Mm-hmm.
to pay for the excise taxes, which means the one who's really paying for it is the consumer
Is the consumer. Yep.
in the end. So you, at no point is the well, maybe I shouldn't quite have put it that way, because there are so many different owners, businesses out there. But for a lot of businesses, um, the they say, well, tax the rich, tax the business owner, or whatever. They must have money because they started a business, right? You know. But
Right.
all those costs get passed down to the workers that they say they support,
Yep.
or the consumers.
Yes.
So it really, in fact, I've often said, and you'll probably agree with me, that actually corporations don't pay taxes.
No. 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 They don't.
We pay
Um.
them.
So yes, on a bottle of wine, yes, we pay. We have to pay the state excise, the federal excise, the sales,
Hmm.
and yeah, we it has to get included into the cost, because if we don't sell our product, we don't make money, and we don't pay taxes.
Right. Right.
So how can you ever, as a politician, say, "Oh no, the company's gonna we're not gonna let them pass that off onto the consumer"? Well, okay, if you're gonna charge me $15 in tax on a bottle of wine,
Mm-hmm.
um, I can't sell my bottle of wine for $30.
Right. No one will buy it.
Um,
Yeah.
it 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 just it doesn't work,
Right.
you know, and it's took a lot of math with a really sharp pencil to figure out our pricing to try to make everything work because um, in a small rural area such as we live in here,
Mm-hmm.
we we can't have California priced wine. We can't.
Right.
Um, but then we don't necessarily need to. We don't have the expensive
Right. Sure.
property taxes.
Yeah.
Um, the facility that we own isn't a $10 million facility.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that helps. But we need to make a little bit of money off of that, of course, to buy. I have
Right.
5 different kinds of paper towels,
Yep.
um, you know, a toilet brush,
Yeah. Yep.
uh, all the other little things, and we need to be able to keep our prices low. And it would be a little nicer if we were taxed off of location.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Or at least if they're taken into account, right?
you know, yeah, because we're taxing that in as the exact same rate as everybody else for the state taxes, same as everybody else throughout the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, Door County, for example, their wine's a little bit more. Granted, it's definitely going to be a little bit more just because of location, property taxes, and blah blah blah. But um, it it's hard to have a high price on our product
Right.
and try to pass it and sell it and make a little bit of money because uh, the more we sell, the more we can make and the more we can expand. But you
Yep.
can't do it if you don't have a fair price product.
Right. So we have about 20-25 minutes left. Let me just take a minute here. And if you are watching live, and there are some people watching live, if you want to post questions in the chat, I am monitoring the chat over here. Um, Go ahead and shoot those to us, and I will direct them either to myself or Chuck or whoever. Well, it's just Chuck and
Yeah, please
I.
do.
So
Please do.
yeah. So now would be a good time. Otherwise, we wouldn't might not have time to answer your questions. Um, what you doing there? Oh, should I get this camera off of you? Hold on. All right, camera's off of you. What's going on there? Oh, it's nothing.
Nothing. Oh yeah, there you are.
Yeah, there. Yeah, you got a little delay. Yeah,
Yep, a little
yeah.
funny.
His secret stash came out. It's
Yep.
fine now. Yeah,
Doing all right. Would you like a little more
yeah. I'll
wine?
take some. I'll take some. As long as we're keeping even, that's all I care about here.
Yeah,
I don't
doing
want
just
to.
fine.
So, um, we've covered. Well, we've gone in many different directions here.
Yeah,
So, with 20 minutes left, do you have any? Oh, I suppose I give you this. It doesn't work otherwise, does it?
I'm not very good at staying on track. Um, my wife usually does that for me.
Well, I think that's exactly why I want to do these podcasts. Conversations, they have a life of their own, and they go where they want, and this is how people discuss
Oh,
important
excuse
things.
me. Yeah, because there's so much context to everything, really.
Right.
Um, you know, prohibition. Geez, I mean that sparked a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You know, um, eh, moonshine, man, um, and that's really what helped. The mafia back in the day,
Right.
and granted they were pretty diverse. They had their fingers basically
Yeah.
into everything, but that was a big thing at the time, you know, and that's a big thing that we're seeing right now with the
Right.
cartels
Right.
and all of the illegal drugs coming from all over the
Right.
world. And if there was some way, you know, I, it's like when you're a kid, your mom told you not to do it, but you're still going to do it
Yeah.
anyways because you're a
Right.
little rebel,
Yeah.
And well, guess what? People are still doing it to this day.
Right.
If you were able to somewhat control it and at least offer some sort of a a safe product.
Sure.
It,
Put guardrails.
yeah,
Guardrails, but let the people move within them.
you know, granted, there are going to be the individuals that take the extra step, or,
Hmm.
you know, I, I don't know, what do you do? Yeah, it would be nice to see something, and maybe get a little extra tax money. Granted, if if there was any sort of tax money coming in, I'm sure the government would find some other
They
great
would put it
idea
to
to
great use.
blow it on something
Yeah.
else, which they do with everything else anyways.
Yeah.
But
That's exactly what I was thinking.
so um and and I know a little bit about this. So my my daughter is a Mankato city of Mankato police officer,
Okay.
and she's been over there for a little over a year now, and very very proud of that kid. She's doing a lot of cool stuff over there, and I was I was pretty damn hard on her, and oh god, she gets so mad at me because if you give me a couple drinks, I was on her about joining the guard, and I'm never gonna do that, and like,
Hmm.
she's like, okay, I'm gonna get a 2 year degree. I'm like, no, you're gonna get a 4 year, and she used to just get so damn mad at me. Well, she got her 4 year degree. She joined the Army National Guard, which Air Force myself, but that's okay. But super proud of this kid, and the city of Mankato is in a very sad state of affairs, at least what I hear from her. Granted, we're in a tiny little town with a couple little people, so uh, the bigger the population, the more problems you're going to have.
Yeah.
But um, 2 weeks ago, she just had her own first successful Narcan recovery. She had
Wait. She
unsuccessful.
wait. She administered
She
it or was done to
administered.
her? Okay.
No, she
She
administered
administered it. Okay.
as a Mankato police officer, and so she was pretty excited about that. But then she knows he's going to be a repeat customer,
Right.
you know, and like, is marijuana a gateway drug? I don't know. I
You could say alcohol is a gateway drug. You could say about any.
you know
Yeah.
so if you open the door to it, I mean,
Yeah. So, but you raised a thought in my mind going back to where you talked about the mafia. And yes, there is a propensity among any red-blooded male for sure, but I know probably no for a fact many females. If someone tells them not to do something, the act of telling them is the trigger for them to want to do it. But there's levels to which we're willing
yep.
to do that, and there does come a point where your generally law-abiding, upstanding citizen says, "Well, I would like to do that, but there's a law." Then you have the other group who don't care about any law and never will.
Hmm.
And so the laws end up almost always being boundaries on the people who would never have broken the laws in the first place. And so they only tie the hands of the people who aren't going to abuse their hands, and the people who were going to be abusive just now they have no competition, right? From the point of view of like to use we've come back to marijuana apparently. Um, you know,
Okay. Well, in it could like tie in with the whole gun thing. Like,
right?
well, what's the point of okay, yes, background checks, very good idea.
Yeah,
Yes. Um, there should be some background checks because there's a lot of people buying stuff that they shouldn't be buying. But are there ways around everything?
yeah,
Yes.
right.
It you know,
Yeah.
uh,
So that's actually probably a good almost analogy for what I was trying to say is so you if you were sort of hypothetically to say ban guns. Sorry, I just threw up a little bit in my mouth. Um, the ones with there would still be people with guns, and the
yes.
result would be the people who followed the law would now be defenseless,
Correct.
against people who have already shown by their willing to break the law that they own a gun.
Yep.
Now, if we could find a way to translate that to almost every law on behaviors that are out there, I think we'd quickly unravel much of the legal code at the state and the federal level. Probably.
It. I don't know. It's just always going to be that way. There's always going to be, well, um, people trying to scam elderly people
Yeah.
with phone calls, emails, all that other shit. There's no matter what you do, there's going to be a crook doing something
That's right.
somewhere
Yep.
to try to make a easy buck.
Yeah.
So I don't know what do you do? You know, yes,
I know what we should do. I know. Lock us all into little foam boxes so that we can't move and can't talk to anyone.
I'm sure the government would like that.
Yeah. And we'd be safe that way. See, there'd be no dangers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I guess you don't like my idea. Well, it would have worked.
Yeah, then there'd be something China would release that would that would eat foam, and then we wouldn't be safe anymore.
What are you doing? So the cat here. No, you know I don't want you on my lap right now. Usually I don't have this problem, but now with this format today, I suddenly do.
Yeah, wine, beer. Yeah, it would be interesting. Maybe it would help some things in the grand scheme of things. It would probably, I I know at least in the past, marijuana wise, how they dropped the severity of some of the fines and penalties with possession of THC, eased some of the backlog in the court system. And in the jail system as well, freed up some space. But you know, I don't know. It might help, but as soon as you open one door, another door opens, and maybe that would cut off some of the money that's flowing to the cartels.
Right.
So,
and I would be in favor of that. That would be nice.
You know, because then maybe that would. But then, okay, if you start taking money away from the cartels in one way, they are going to have to make it up in other ways. So then what else are we going to see from that? Because there's always an opposite reaction. You know, they love their money and they want as much money as possible. So what are they going to do to supplement that? You know, is there going to be more trafficking or who knows?
Right. I think I could probably come up with a reasonable thought as to what would be the result. You're right, they would certainly react, but what it would do, like let's say you took certain things that are less dangerous. I hate to keep coming back to marijuana, but like marijuana, I'm sure we have to come up with something else for next time, because I don't want this to be the marijuana podcast.
Man, talked about a lot of different stuff.
But what would happen is, what I think would happen is, as they reshifted into other activities, we would force them out of the areas that are actually fairly innocent into the areas that are even more pernicious, where we as a society would feel more comfortable being aggressive in combating them. Like right now, like if someone comes in, if a cartel comes in selling marijuana, you're like, oh, they're just selling marijuana, you know, whatever. No one's gonna be bent out of shape about that. If the cartel decides we're gonna do some human trafficking, we're like, whoa, no, you know, that's too far. And no decent person, even if you got rid of all the laws, if you got rid of all laws that said you can't traffic in humans, most decent people are gonna say no. That, like, decent people are not gonna suddenly say, wow, it's now legal, right? There's no laws against human trafficking, so I guess I'm gonna do it, right? That's not gonna happen, you know. So
Yeah.
we would push the lawbreakers into areas that, yeah, it's more extreme, but
Hmm.
also um, our our collective agreement on what constitutes evil would kick in a little bit better, I think, and we think we'd be able to confront that.
It's very possible.
Or is that just overly optimistic?
Um, a lot of us are just living in our own little bubble and really have no idea what's going on in the real world, um, as in crime, because we just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, we're we're busy making wine, we're busy drinking wine, have no idea what the guy across the street is doing.
Yeah.
And who cares, because you got your own life to live.
Right.
So it's really hard to say what would happen or how it would happen, but um, in the grand scheme of things, at least I'd say for the alcohol industry, it worked out quite well.
Yeah, it's not too bad, really.
Um,
Yeah.
I This is pretty awesome. I kind of like doing this, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so is there other industries, um, potentially,
Yeah.
you know, uh, well, the whole CBD oil thing, that there's a bunch of people in this area that do that as well,
Hmm.
and they they're not getting rich. They're making some money. They're doing okay,
Yeah.
but there's a need, and they're filling that need, and they're doing something that they like to do. So what better thing to do to make a living, or just live, but doing something fun that you like to do, you know? Um, I like making wine, and there is nothing better than opening the door and people are coming in, and I have no idea who they are, where they came from, but they come from all over, and talk with them. And we as soon as they walk in the door, we have something in common, you know. We If they didn't like wine, they wouldn't be there.
Hmm.
And so then that opens the door or breaks the glass,
Hmm.
and we start a conversation, and it's just so much fun to talk with new people with very diverse backgrounds, and learn their story, and just to have a nice time, you know. But it's fun listening to other people's stories from all over the country, and that's what I really like doing. Um, some weekends when we're open, I I have stuff I have to do down in the basement. I have to rack. I have to do something, label, whatever. But I really hate being down in the basement when we're open,
Mm.
because, well, hell, I like to talk, you know. So it kind of hurts, you know, and
Uh-huh.
because I just like to talk with people, and hey, how the hell's your day going, and
Hmm.
what do you do for a living,
Yeah.
and where'd you come from? And if I'm in the basement, I can't have those conversations, so it kind of sucks. And
Yeah.
I I like making the wine. I like having conversations. And probably the best part about it, though, is that I have never seen, in all of my travels, going to other wineries, doing research, as we like to say,
Right.
um, never seen anybody in a winery with a frown on their face. Everybody is there having a nice time. And who doesn't want to be in a nice, fun, warm, friendly environment? And I'm working in that.
Hmm.
Like, I remember right after we started, one of the local police officers asked me how it's going. I'm like, you know what? It's great. It is the exact opposite of your job.
Right. Right.
Like, I who doesn't want to go to work and everybody's happy and having a gay old
Right.
time?
Yeah.
Like, that's a perfect place to be, you know. I
Hmm.
it's just awesome, and I just love it.
So we have not really said much about your actual winery. we only have a few minutes left, so we should do that. We see from the sweatshirt 1891 winery. I don't think we can read because of the light splash on it in Greenwood, Wisconsin. So, how long have you guys been in business?
So, yep, Chuck Susa, and I am co-owner with my wife Casey, and then Dan and Jessica Wolf. There's four of us that are in on this business. Um, the idea started many years ago, actually, um, and it all goes back to really my mom, and where I learned about wine
Hmm.
and how to make it the right way, and definitely made plenty of wrong wine the wrong way. Um, I definitely have made some delicious cooking vinegar. um, but the whole process, it took quite a while to get up and going and get established. But um, we got a beautiful 125-year-old brick building right in downtown Greenwood, Wisconsin. Um, it it's a perfect fit for us.
Is that where the 1891 comes from?
No, so 1891 comes from the year that the city that we're in was
Okay.
established.
Okay.
And so why is it really about our Greenwood history? So my great grandfather was the first one to settle in this area. And so then my grandfather, born and raised and farmed just south of town, and then my dad was also born and raised in Greenwood and lives 7 miles outside of town to this day. And so I'm fourth generation Sousa living in the Greenwood area. So Greenwood itself is, to me, is very important, and also for my wife as well. My wife, um, her grandparents live in town. Her mom was born and raised in Greenwood, and still lives in Greenwood. Her grandparents actually live directly behind the winery, and it's kind of fun because Grandpa Otto, he goes for walks around the block all the time, and he pokes his head in all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it it's great, and he remembers our building way back when it was a hardware store,
Yeah.
and um, so just a little side story. They used to have the that side of the family Christmas party at the Legion. This past Christmas, we moved it to the winery, and they could not get Grandpa to go, but when it came to the winery,
Huh.
Grandpa showed up.
Huh.
That it
Huh.
it's just something about our town, but then our town is not just important to us, but it's our family legacy, and if we don't do something to make our little town better, then it's not going to be better. And we still have two boys that are in the school system yet. And really, when you think about it, it really is a village that raises a child, and it, it's very important.
I'm looking for Hillary here somewhere. Who invited her? Go on. Yeah, sorry.
you know, um, because you have all your friends. When
Mm-hmm.
you're growing up, you have all your friends and other people around the community that in really help shape you to become the person that you are. You really don't realize it at all,
Mm-hmm.
but it it's all those little things in the community that make you a better person. And so we wanted to, um, one, make our community better. Yes, by serving alcohol because our community needed more.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure. Yeah, it was the outlier in Wisconsin. It was not. It was a dry city before you guys came here.
but make our town a little bit better, keep it alive, and going for the next generation that we have coming up. but then also showcasing our history from our little town. And so since my great grandfather and my grandfather lived in town or the area forever, it was very easy to get a lot of local pieces that we have displayed in our building.
Hmm.
And it it's kind of fun and interesting. um, but then even all the way down to our tables, everything has a story. And to me, everything needs to have a story, because if it doesn't have a story, well, it's just meaningless junk.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the point of having it? You know, all the way down to our tables. If we were to ever close, it'd be hard because I would have to build a really big house because I don't know where I'm going to put all these tables.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Ooh.
they all have meaning. You know
That telephone on the wall. What's that about?
that's Lawrence and Hertha's, so they live to the northeast of town.
Okay.
Um, I I don't have the greatest memory. I can't remember the whole story, but we have the story on how that phone was actually passed down, and it is all 100% original.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful piece, and if you come in, you can go over to the crank and hear the bell ring and
Uh-huh.
everything. But every time the bell rings, you need to buy a bottle of
Oh, of
wine.
course
So
you do.
so
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
feel free to let it
So,
ring.
you probably know that my wife's family is from the area and goes way back.
Hmm.
We turned up a an old phone book, and I think her grandma's phone number was like 50
I was gonna
or
say
52.
two.
Yeah, something like really small, right?
Yep.
And of course there were numbers in, like, number 5, number 7,
Yep.
and it's just, we've come a long way.
Very long way. And one of so my great grandfather on or my grandfather on my mom's side, it's kind of funny how, like, old people don't know how to use technology. My grandfather was actually the one who passed away at 97, was the very first one in our family to have a cell phone.
Really.
Yeah, completely surprised. Yeah, the guy farming with horses,
Uh-huh.
he's got a cell phone.
That's funny. That's
It
funny.
is. Uh,
So, we have reached the
mm,
8 o'clock hour, and it's not the worst thing in the world. But why don't you what today is April 3rd, I think.
yes.
When do you guys officially open for the season?
Yes. So, 1891 Winery, Greenwood, Wisconsin.
Hold your
We
hold your wine glass up one more time. Say that
oh,
all again. There you
1891 Winery
there you go. All right.
in Greenwood, Wisconsin. um, Small family owned operated facility. We open actually in April 18th, so it's only a couple days away, really. Um, and then we will, of course, be closed April 20th for Easter, but otherwise we will be open until the week before Christmas, and we're open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then Friday is 4 to 7, Saturday is 11 to 6, and Sunday is 11 to 5. But Sunday we have our special Bloody Marys.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Quite delicious. If you like Bloody Marys, mm, you'll really enjoy it. But if you've never had a wine Bloody Mary,
All right.
it absolutely delicious.
Okay.
It You'll have to try, because I
All right.
don't think you had one yet, Tony.
No, I am sure that I have not.
So that is our Sunday specials. Otherwise, on Friday and Saturday we have slushies.
Okay.
Mm, Slushies are quite delicious too.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never had a Bloody Mary of any kind.
Tony, you never lived.
I don't know. It sounds scary. Like,
So
did Mary actually die to provide me this drink? This is the thought that goes into my mind.
this would be probably another good podcast.
The Bloody Mary drink.
the history of Bloody Marys.
You could do a whole hour and a half on that, could you?
Um, I There's some people that, I mean, get the fully loaded like $100 Bloody Mary with hamburgers and a. I even seen one with a chicken sticking out, a
What?
whole chicken. Yeah, it's a whole meal. You know, granted, we just do a little wine glass with a pickle in it, but
Which sounds really lame compared to what you just described. Just saying. If there's not a chicken sticking out of my drink, I don't know why I'm buying it.
well, the wine glass would tip over.
But yeah,
Yep.
the practicality asserts itself, I suppose.
But um, I I don't like tomato juice, but I do love a good Bloody Mary. But if you like tomato juice, you'll like a good Bloody Mary.
Okay. All right. Well, should I try if knowing that I've never had one at all?
Mm-hmm.
Should I try others and then try yours so that I can tell yours is the best, or should I just go right to yours?
It is so kind of side note. We just went on a cruise a couple weeks ago. We went
Okay.
on like the second largest ship in the world, and there was quite a few people that told us, "Well, you're ruined now. You will never be able to go down."
Yeah.
So, um, it's probably best to try some others first. So then, you might find some others because there's a lot of different ways to make it.
Okay.
But um, it's always best to start at the bottom and work your way up.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But
All right.
it's
Okay.
only a couple days
So
away.
what I'm hearing from you is if I'm disappointed by my first ones, don't swear it off completely until I've had yours.
True. Yes.
All right.
Correct. And um, but you can still just come and try
Okay.
ours
All
right
right.
away.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Well, Chuck, thank you for being on for my first in studio
Yeah.
thing.
Anytime.
There was a little mayhem at the beginning, but the funny thing is no one's ever going to know about it because it's going to be deleted.
Nice.
It'll be gone within short order. But would you join me again sometime? Do you think?
Definitely. I could just
There's
ask my wife. I
a
could
lot of
talk
things to
on and
talk about,
on
right?
about
Okay.
anything and everything.
Well, one of the next things that I need to do, what I would like to do, is learn how to take this on the road.
Oh, exciting.
There's some new technical hurdles that I have to do, and people are seeing that I've got I have a laptop in my lap today
Mm-hmm.
so that I can. So I've mastered one new layer of technology. To do that would require yet another layer of
Mm-hmm.
technology, but that would be fun to actually go like, and
Go
then we
sit
could just
in random places.
yeah go to where people are,
Mm-hmm.
go to your wine, and then we could just be there, and it'd be just be a wild
Definitely.
affair. Invite everybody, invite the whole town. Now that
I
that
might
would
be
be
a little busy, but
it might be a little chaos. We might not scratch that whole idea. Yeah, forget I ever said it. Anyway, thanks for being on. Really appreciate it. And
uh, thanks for having me. Um, it it's just nice to have a good conversation, and kind of tell some stories, get some of my stories out, get some of yours, and there's nothing better than listening and watching and learning something.
yeah,
And especially talking about prohibition and basically how the cause and effect, and how it's still affecting us to this day.
yeah, right,
So awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
you bet. And I would have liked to have possibly done a nice little contrast with my own upbringing in Detroit. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, did you know that about me?
I did not.
All
Are
right.
are you like a closet rapper then?
The funny thing is, I took the camera off of you. Uh, no, no, I'm not a closet rapper, but Eminem was grew up, well, 5 Mile. I should put you back on here just for a second. One of his songs is 5 Mile.
Hmm.
That's only 5 miles from me, where I
Oh
grew
yeah.
up, ironically. Yeah,
Oh, so you could be a rapper.
I could be.
Oh.
Yeah, probably like a Baby Ruth rapper, but personally, I am.
Ooh. I
more
like
of a
baby
Heath.
Ruth.
All right. All right.
uh,
Let's wrap this up. Thanks for watching. If you've watched all the way through, really appreciate it. I thought this was a really great example of what I hope to accomplish in this podcast, where people can just talk. And I know that other people do it too. Like Joe Rogan talks about how he just wants to have conversations with people.
Rambling on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the thing that I bring to it. The little, besides trying to sell the books of my authors, of course, is let's find an old idea that's still relevant and explore how it's relevant. So if you watched this far, I thank you, and please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and tell all of your friends. Right now we have 45 subscribers. Tomorrow I better wake up and find out I have 46. And with that, we're signing off. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Yeah.